All right, and welcome back again to the Paisan Sports podcast presented by Elevation 5280 Sports. Dante DeBlasto, joined as always by Zach Deal of What's the Deal Sports. So I gotta ask, what's the deal with the New York Giants? First of all, what's the deal with the team? They're bad. They stink. But what is the deal with that front office? They pay Daniel Jones big money. They let Saquon Barkley walk. What are they doing?
This is what they get. This is a payback. And, it's as simple as that. It's really not much to talk about with that situation. I think everybody expected this to happen. Daniel Jones has thrown 3 pick sixes since his contract that he was given and 2 touchdowns to his offensive players. So 8 total picks. I mean, Daniel Jones, I think everybody can see with the eye test and just when he got picked 6 overall, I think everybody was flabbergasted in that moment. And I'm pretty sure the Giants had 2 first-round picks in that draft, and they drafted him with a higher selection. So, I mean, this is, an organization that has never really been able to get it right. Even when they were contenders with Eli Manning, their rosters weren't crazy good, but they had a really good defensive line, and their defense played really well, and they were able to be wild card teams that went far. But this is a team that hasn't been able to get it right for a very long time, and it just has been showing. And they really haven't been competitive in the NFC East or the NFL at all in recent memory. And, it's every single year as an Eagles fan, you just go into the season knowing that the Giants aren't a threat.
Yeah, I saw somebody post on Twitter a screenshot of the NFC East standings, Eagles 1-0, Cowboys 1-0, Commanders and Giants 0-1, and said, I swear this is the division every year. And it pretty much is. Obviously not in the sense of every week 1 this is the result, but in the sense of every year the division is Eagles and Cowboys battling it out to win the division, and then Commanders and Giants just doing awful. And I mean, it's still early in the season, but I think it's safe to say it's going to be the same story this year. I think maybe, it's still very early, so we'll wait to see about the Commanders, or we'll wait to see if the Eagles are going to end up being very dominant, or if the Cowboys really are that good this year, if they just beat up on a bad Browns team. But so far, it seems like the trend is continuing. And I don't know about you, but I've been looking at clips of that GM for the Giants. What a cocky little moron
I
that
thought you were
guy
going
is.
down a
Oh
different
my
route with that
God.
word.
Dude,
I thought you were
every
going down.
time they show him in his front office, he's sitting there behind the desk. There's a bunch of people around him. And the main gist of it is the people around him are like, man, we can't let Saquon walk. We gotta find a way to bring him back. And then he's always just behind the desk, like you know what I mean? Like, not exactly, but he just has that attitude to him of like,
Yeah, just
you know.
carefree, as in, like, I'll just let it play out and see how it goes.
Yeah,
I'm not too
exactly.
concerned or
And
worried
now
about
and
anything
now
like
look how
that.
things are going. I mean, just
Exactly.
an
And
idiot.
it's funny because, like, maybe when Saquon was drafted number 2 overall, like a running back number 2, is like a tough sell to any GM. But at the end of the day, I mean, he was that talented and that good for that draft class. And you just see, even with bad teams, you usually see bad teams hold on to certain players regardless of how their team is going, unless that player requests a trade. And you just like see them go over the years, and maybe that player like makes the Hall of Fame. Like a guy like Andre Johnson for the Texans. Like the Texans were never competitive with Andre Johnson, but they
Yeah.
kept him on the roster, and he was the receiving leader champion for like 2 years straight. And they knew they weren't going to win anything, but at the end of the day, they still had something to sell their fans on. And it's getting to the point where why would you show up to MetLife Stadium as a Giants fan to go watch Daniel Jones? It's not
Yeah.
like you're selling, like, at least Saquon would put fans in the seats. I mean, the product that they're putting on the field now, I mean, Malik Neighbors looked good in his debut, but at the end of the day, he has Daniel Jones throwing him the ball. And that's why I know a lot of people, when we talk about fantasy football in a little bit, wanted to steer clear of Malik Neighbors, especially his ADP, because Daniel Jones is the quarterback. And this team has done some things. Their defense like has some talent on that side of the ball. They got 2 good edge rushers. They got a good guy in the middle and Dexter Lawrence. I mean, they're not the worst defense in the world, but their offense is so inept that they just get put into bad situations all the time. And I mean, some of those just errant throws. I mean, at the end of the day, the pick six that he threw the other day on the line of scrimmage, I mean, that just happens. That's a really good play by Andrew Van Ginkel. But also, that's just like something that Daniel Jones has come accustomed to, is just throwing pick sixes. And it's just like he's like a target.
Well, I'm sure many people are aware because I mean the stats been showed all over the place. But since Daniel Jones signed his major contract extension going into last season, he's thrown more pick sixes than touchdowns. 2 touchdowns to 3 pick sixes. Like, I'm
You
not
must
just
not have heard
talking
what I was
about
saying
more
5 minutes ago.
interceptions than touchdowns. I'm talking more pick sixes. That's unheard of. And then, like, I saw somebody talk about, like, oh, he only played a certain amount of games last year. It's like, 4 games should be plenty to throw more than 2 touchdowns. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
he played
When your TD to int ratio is literally what, a 2 to 8, so that's like 0.25.
he threw 8 interceptions.
Yeah, he's got 8 interceptions since his
In that time span, yeah.
in that time
Yeah.
span.
So because all I know is just that stat about the pick sixes that I've been seeing from graphics, but how many he started 6 games. He started 6 games. Like he started 7 since signing his new deal. 7 starts, 2 touchdowns. That is horrendous. That is so egregiously bad. I can't begin to understate it. And I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a Giants fan because I've been rubbing this in his face a lot, especially since once the Eagles got off to a slow start on Friday. We'll get into that later. He texted me just saying y'all ass. So I've been letting him hear it ever since. Here's the thing, right? You look back to how Daniel Jones ended up getting this new contract, right? 2022, Giants have a very good season. They make the playoffs, right? Daniel Jones was the quarterback. So they give him a new contract. He was not the reason for that good season.
I think he threw, you can look this up. I'm pretty sure he
15
threw
touchdowns.
15 touchdown passes in that
15
year.
touchdowns. They made the playoffs off the heels of a good defense and a good run game, right? So instead of keeping the guys who, were responsible for that good defense and were responsible for that good run game, instead of keeping those guys, no, they keep the quarterback that threw 15 touchdowns. It makes no sense. And the messed up part is, like, I hate the Giants. I am thrilled that they're this dumb, but yet, like, I'm angry about it. Like, I'm visibly angry because it's like, how as a human being can you be, or how as a front office?
Well, where do you think that anger
so
stems from?
stupid?
Where do you think that anger stems from? Because like we don't see the Giants as a threat. Do you think the anger stems from for you? Like, because it kind of stems from for me. I get angry about it too. Just like, how does a guy make this much money and is this bad and keeps a job? You know what I mean? It's more so about that. Like, I really don't care if the Giants get
Yeah,
the
like, I'm
quarterback
angry
or
at the
not.
stupidity of it.
Yeah.
Like,
So I mean, I don't think
sometimes you
Drew
see
Lock's going to be
stupidity,
any
you get
better.
angry.
I don't think Drew Lock is the answer either, or Tommy DeVito. I don't think they had the answer on their roster. They had opportunities to go and get a quarterback in this draft if they really wanted to. Maybe they didn't see the guy that they wanted available on the board. But, at the end of
Did
the
you
day, you gotta,
see the clip of the GM talking to his teenage son in his office?
I think so, yeah.
He was sitting there and he's like, "Oh, who do you think we should take at 6?" And his son's like, "Trade up and draft Jaden Daniels." He should have listened. Like, how does
Yeah.
your teenage son have a better sense of what to do with a professional football team, the New York Giants, than you do? It's insane.
Well, that also means, like, that also goes to the point where it's like, how many cracks at the top 5 are they going to have? And they're going to have a lot of cracks at the top 5 or top 10 in the draft because they're that bad. So maybe that's his mentality,
they
is that
nailed
they
it.
can try and fill out the roster. I think they're trying to fill out the roster, and they know Daniel Jones isn't the answer. They're going to let the contract ride out, and then they'll go and get their quarterback at the back end of the contract, and then maybe Malik Neighbors is a lot better, and some of the other young guys that they have going over there improve as well, like Theo Johnson, the tight end too. But at the end of the day, the Giants are just an absolute mess, and it just starts at the quarterback position, the most important position in football. And some teams are able to overcome it. I mean, the Steelers kicked 6 field goals versus the Falcons. Were able to win that game with not the greatest quarterback play in the world from Justin
Well, they didn't
Fields.
throw any pick sixes, so that helped.
Exactly. So you just got to make sure you take care of the ball, and their defense is significantly better than the Giants defense. But some other teams are able to win and overcome the quarterback position, but the Giants are just in such a hole with Daniel Jones that. And the funny part was that Vikings line. Did you see the line before the game?
No, what was it?
It was like -108 both ways.
Really? Wow.
The Vikings were literally at max. I think right before kickoff they were -112, and the Giants were like -106.
I guess that's probably because they figured the Vikings with Sam Darnold, but
that just shows even more further proof that Daniel Jones is making $40 million, and you got this guy that was seen as a draft bust, drafted at the top of the draft by the Jets back in the day, and he's bounced around the league as a backup quarterback and hasn't been able to stick and land a spot, and he still goes in there and outplays. I think Sam Darnold started off the game something like 12 for 12 or 13 for 13 versus the Giants defense. So, I mean, he was cooking himself, and that offense is actually pretty good. I mean, if they have a viable quarterback for the next couple of years, they got Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, who ended up getting banged up in that game, TJ Hawkinson, who's hurt right now. So, I mean, that team's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. I just thought that line was absolutely crazy. But that's enough Giants talk for now. I think we pretty much cemented our cases with that. Let's get on to another NFC East team in our hometown, Philadelphia Eagles. What is your biggest takeaway from the Eagles game versus the Packers in Brazil on Friday night?
I'll give you my biggest takeaways because it's hard for me to narrow it down to one. And I think they're just going to be what everyone else had as a takeaway. Number one, Saquon Barkley. I mean, what a phenomenal athlete. That cut he made on the first touchdown run when a lot of running backs would have ended up getting tackled in the
Quay Walker
backfield
was
there.
in the hole, and he just gave him a little stutter step and just completely made him whiff out of the way and just not even close. And I love his patent jumps into the end zone from wherever he is, like 2 or 3 yard line.
And then the other run, I mean, the big run that he ripped off in the fourth quarter, the way when he was handed the ball and he's heading right at first, and you could see the defensive line, the linebackers sort of shift to their left, his right. He realizes nothing is there, and then he kind of just bends it back through that hole on the left side that was opened up because they were pursuing him to the right, and then just absolutely sprinted through at full speed. I mean, it is insane to watch him run the football and catch passes. So I mean, I am mainly really excited for Monday night's game just because I want to see more of Saquon Barkley.
100%. I think a big reason why Saquon was able to have a big game. You know who really impressed me in the first game was Mekhi Becton. Mekhi Becton.
I was going to mention him as well.
He looked there was a little bit of pressure from the Packers offensive line, but in the run game, Mekhi Becton was just absolutely dominating, and him and Cam Jurgens too. It wasn't just Mekhi Becton; they were getting perfect angles to open up those holes for Saquon to be able to run through. And some of the times they got stopped for minimal gains, and the Packers have some talent up front on the defensive line, so that's just as expected. But
here's the thing about that. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. First of all, the chemistry between Becton and Jurgens looked great. But here's the thing. You can say, they had some runs for small yardage, right? But you know what you didn't say? Oh, well, they had some runs for negative yardage. Or, they had some runs for no gain. Like, if 2 yards is the worst case scenario. You're not like at any point getting tackled in the backfield besides the slip from the slippery field against a great defensive line, then that shows how good your offensive line and running back is. If like
Yeah,
2 yards is minimum every
they
time.
definitely did their thing, and I like the balance of the offense too. I think Kellen Moore called a really good game. He got everybody pretty much involved. Jahan Dotson, I just felt like he wasn't going to get involved to begin with because there wasn't enough time to build a game plan for him, and you don't really have to use him too much. I feel like he's more so of an insurance policy for AJ Brown and Devontae Smith more so than him just being a target. So I think they moved the ball to all their playmakers really well. Devontae Smith. Continues to be criminally underrated. I think he's one of the best
Mm-hmm.
receivers in the league. I think he's arguably top 10. I mean, what can't he do on a football field? Catches balls on fourth down and tight windows and double coverage, breaks tackles when you need him to. Was the most targeted wide receiver for the Eagles versus the Packers, and it just shows why they gave him that contract as well. AJ obviously had the big play and just did AJ type things, always getting yards after the catch and just bullying his way down the field. Dallas Goedert had a couple nice catches. And like I said, I think Kellen Moore really called a nice game, especially being behind the 8 ball to begin the game because they started off really slow. And some of the errant passes that Jalen Hurts was throwing and just bad decisions that he was making kind of put them in a whole little bit. I'm not going to put the fumble on him with the exchange, but I don't like to see the center and the quarterback have plays like that often. Because, I mean, I watched all the games on Sunday, and I didn't see a single quarterback center exchange issue like that, and there was 2 of them. So,
Yeah, I mean, know, not only did they not play the preseason at all, it was a slippery field as well. You can say, well, not every quarterback played the preseason, but you also can't say um, not every quarterback, or I mean, I'm getting confused in my brain. The point is, Hurts and Jordan Love were the only Hurts, Jordan Love, and there's 2 centers were the only quarterback and centers around the NFL that had to deal with a slippery ass field this past weekend. And then when you combine that with not really having familiarity going into the season, being a brand new quarterback and center duo, having not played any preseason together, now you're on the slippery field in Brazil. Um, you know, so I feel like the main thing with Friday night's game is I feel like you can't properly evaluate everyone until you see them on a normal field. And I mean that in good and bad ways. You can't properly evaluate how good somebody was until you see them on a normal
well,
field,
that's
as
the
well as you
overlaying
can't.
thing to begin with, too, just it being the first game, too. So,
Yeah, it's the first game. I mean, like we had some big plays, as a result of the Packers falling victim to a slippery field, and the Packers had some big plays as a result of us falling victim to a slippery field. So you got to see them play on a normal playing ground. But outside of Saquon Barkley, Mekhi Becton, another guy that I thought really, really impressed was Quinyon Mitchell. The Packers, right from the get-go, it seemed like their whole thought was, okay, rookie corner out there, let's go and attack him. And it did not work. It did not work.
yeah.
He was excellent. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't like a shutdown corner. But for a rookie in his first NFL game, I will emphasize again, it was a slippery field. Against a very good Packers team. He looked absolutely excellent. He had some really nice pass breakups.
Yeah, that was the thing. I felt like the Eagles' defensive backs didn't get their hands on the ball a lot last year, and it just felt like a whole different team that you were watching with how many times Quinyon Mitchell got his hands on the ball, the type of swag that he was playing with, the confidence that he was playing with. He looked like a bona fide first-round pick and the first corner being drafted. So, I mean, I'm really excited for the future of Quinyon Mitchell.
Timeout.
I think there was some other issues. Like I thought Avonte Maddox did not play well at all, and I thought he was the reason why some of the pass coverage was getting burnt.
He
But
looked terrible.
yeah, I didn't understand why Keelan Ringo didn't
Maddox
get more.
looked awful.
I didn't understand why Keelan Ringo didn't get more of an opportunity. I think they see him more as an outside corner and not a slot guy, but I think his talent just overweighs what Avonte Maddox is right now, and Avonte Maddox just gets cooked in the slot. So I think teams will attack him more so, and obviously they're going to still attack Quinyon just because he's young and they're going to see what he's about, but Quinyon definitely stepped up to the test, especially when the Eagles didn't generate any pressure. And that was my biggest concern going into the season. But the defensive line just like really underwhelmed me in the first game. Bryce Huff got outsnapped by Brandon Graham and Nolan Smith, which was absolutely crazy. In my opinion, you're paying the guy that much money, and Brandon Graham's in the last year of a 15 year career, and he's out snapping the guy that you just your big offseason acquisition. So that was not good to see. There was 2 sacks, and they were both by Zach Bond. So I mean, the one sack was at the end of the game, and it was like a coverage sack and Hail Mary, so that doesn't even really count. You know what I mean? That's just a play that you make in space. So I liked the back seven of the defense, but the front seven or the front four did not impress me whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean,
Just was very underwhelmed, and it just shows they're going to run that 3-4 set. They have Nolan Smith and Josh Sweat listed as linebackers and Bryce Huff, so they're coming off the edge. They had Milton Williams crack the starting lineup as one of the 3 down linemen that was in there. So him, Jordan Davis, and Jalen Carter were the 3 guys that were down in front, and they just were not generating pressure. I mean, Jalen Carter generated pressure. I'm more so talking about the edge
Jalen
rusher.
Carter was very disruptive on the D line.
Yeah,
But
I'm more so
when
I'm being critical. When I'm being critical of the pass rush, it's more so being critical of the edge rushers than what the
Yeah, well,
interior
what I
did.
was gonna say is I never liked the Bryce Huff signing that much. I mean, he's coming off just one great season, followed by a bunch of preceded by a bunch of subpar to mediocre seasons, and then he has one great breakout year, and it's like, oh, surely this means he'll do it every year. Let's pay him a bunch of money. So I mean, like he didn't look good, but I'm not like, oh, we pay this guy all this money and he can't generate pressure. I wasn't expecting him to generate a ton of pressure because I was never that confident in him.
Yeah.
So to me, it was kind of like not a surprise at all. I hopefully he'll get it going a bit more. It's only week 1, but to see him be ineffective, to be a non-factor in the game does not surprise me one bit.
Yeah, and they had a lot of issues stopping the run as well. They were giving up 7.8 yards per clip, which was not something that you want to see, especially versus a team like some of the teams that you're going to play, like how the 49ers last night were able to get Jordan Mason 146 yards on the ground without Christian McCaffrey. Versus teams like that, you're going to get absolutely worked up and down the field if you can't stop the run. So I liked Zach Bond. I thought the linebackers were impressive.
Zach Bond was terrific. He
Zach
was
Bond is somebody
phenomenal.
that I in an ideal world for me, I hope that Devin White and Nakobe Dean were the starters before the season started, but now you can't take Zach Bond off the field. I don't know what's going to happen with the Devin White situation. We didn't even get to talk about that last week, right before the game. He was inactive, and there was rumors about him possibly getting traded before the season started, and there's a lot of rumors coming out of Philadelphia of what could be happening with that situation. So he talked about it a little bit this week, if he would accept a backup role, and kind of didn't really answer the question. But I think Devin White may take over Nakobe Dean's spot when he comes back healthy, because you can't take Zach Bond off the field. And like I said, in the perfect world before the season started, I thought Nakobe and Devin White would be the guys. But after what I saw versus the Packers, it kind of seems like this is actually a breakout party. Like a lot of people say, like, oh, Zach Bond can play this, that, the other. It just really hasn't had an opportunity. And like, it was actually true, talking about how versatile he was as a linebacker, being able to rush the passer and stuff like that and intercept passes. And he just did it in a short frame size when he was with the Saints. But it actually came to fruition on Friday night. So I'm excited to see what he does, and he's going to have a tough task trying to stop Bijan Robinson this upcoming week.
Yeah, the thing about Zach Bond, played in New Orleans, was primarily a special teamer. Wasn't really anything. And Vic Fangio kind of just was like, hey, this Zach Bond guy, he's the perfect kind of linebacker I need to run my system. So they bring him in, and now he's just so far, he's really impressing. Vic Fangio really knew what he was doing with going after him. So big time credit to Vic.
And
And that's
that's what you
another
get when
thing.
you get a guy when you have a coordinator that's that experienced. He's able to address and realize what some people are able to do, and maybe they might be diamonds in the rough. And I feel like
Yeah,
Vic Fangio also had something to do with Quinyon Mitchell being drafted as well. I think that those go hand in hand, and you obviously saw how well both of those guys played. So um, it was a really good showing for the defense, especially. I mean, they weren't able to stop the run, but they made enough plays when they needed to make plays, especially with some of the situations that their offense put them into. But let's talk about a guy that we have yet to even mention one time, and is the
wait.
most important player on the roster.
Hold on 1 second before we get into that. This is a very quick update. I know you hate when I give these updates, but it was 4-4
Worst
in the
ever.
bottom of the eighth. I couldn't help but check. Runner second on third. Cal Stevenson's delivers a double to put the Phillies up 6-4 in the bottom of the eighth. So clutch. And he came into pinch hit. So clutch AB by Cal Stevenson. Hopefully they can hang on and win now. Continue.
We'll talk about the Phillies at the back end of the podcast, but a guy that we haven't talked about yet that's the most important player on the Philadelphia Eagles didn't have the best game on Friday. Had the most turnover worthy plays in the NFL for week one, threw two interceptions, fumbled one that wasn't really his fault. It was a bad snap, and then had another one at the end of the game that was on the goal line. I actually lost my parlay that I had because I had Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown score as the last leg, and I thought the tush push was going to get it in for me, and he
The
ends up
Brazilian
fumbling
butt
the
lift.
snap. But yeah, Jalen Hurts. I think he needs to clean up his play a little bit. The thing about Jalen Hurts is he has such a good um, reform and chemistry with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. I feel like he just gets a little reckless with the ball, like the interception in the end zone. AJ might be open, but Jalen Hurts doesn't really have that strong of an arm to make a Patrick Mahomes-esque throw over the middle of the field. And that's a play where you see if you're playing against a good defensive back like Jair Alexander, one of the best in the league, he's going to make that play 10 times out of 10. So I was not happy or pleased with that throw. Started off the game, I thought even worse. That was just a really bad decision, but I thought an even worse decision was in the beginning of the game when he threw that ball up the seam out of his end zone, which was an interception to give the Green Bay Packers the ball at the 20-yard line, putting your defense in a massive, massive hole. So Jalen Hurts really has to clean up, and that wasn't the only two plays. Those were just the ones that ended up being interceptions. You also had a couple, like the one that Nixon should have brought to the crib where he threw it into the flat late to Dotson when they were driving
Yeah,
all the way down
that
the
one
field.
was pretty bad. That
That
one
one
was
was
pretty
awful. They
bad.
also had
Yeah.
another one. Jair Alexander almost had another one that AJ Brown boxed him out and pretty much played defense on the ball to make sure that the ball wasn't intercepted. So he definitely made some really good throws. And obviously, like I said, the chemistry between him, AJ, and Devontae only gets stronger by the year. And they're all just so young and exciting. But I feel like he's just still trying to play hero ball when he doesn't need to. I mean, the offense was running the ball so well. They were able to move the chains when they needed to, especially on fourth and third down when they got into those situations. And the game was kept too close because of the mistakes that Jalen Hurts specifically solely was making.
Yeah, he he had a good game and a bad game. You know, he made a lot of boneheaded decisions. Um, the one interception to Jair Alexander, I saw Brian Baldinger post a
Alldinger.
video on Instagram from the All 22 view, and I'm not gonna say it wasn't Hertz's fault because still, moving, throwing across your body over the middle of the field like that, you have defenders in the area, even though AJ Brown is open. It's not the smartest decision, but he could have gotten away with it if AJ Brown didn't slip. It still could have ended up being an
I don't want to.
interception.
I don't want to make that. That's not an excuse, though. That's
No, but
still a
that's
bad
what I'm
throw.
saying. That's why I prefaced it. I'm not saying it's not his fault, but I'm just saying, in all
I'm
fairness
taking
to him,
Jair Alexander to intercept that ball 8 times out of 10 at the minimum.
all I'm saying is, in all fairness to Jalen Hurts, if AJ Brown didn't slip, it might not have been an interception. That does not take away from the other interception he threw. That does not take away from the near pick six he threw. That does not take away from the other interception he always threw. I'm just saying that. But
Well, do you think that goal line, like when they were backed up against their own end and that seam pass that he threw, that wasn't even there was the thing about the AJ play that I'll admit is AJ was open, but you aren't in a situation to be able to make that pass and deliver
and
that
you
pass.
also didn't need to. You also didn't need, like, you weren't in a dire situation where you needed to
Exactly.
make a play
But
into the end
the
zone there.
interception in the first quarter, that was when they were backed up and he threw it up the
That
seam.
was a bit more dire.
That was double covered and there was nobody open. That was just
Yeah,
a
it was
horrible
a
decision.
that was more of a situation where you had to get a first down. It was a bonehead decision because no one was open. The one with AJ Brown, he was open, but there was no need to force a throw because you didn't need end zone there. A field goal would have definitely sufficed. But despite Jalen Hurts' boneheaded decisions all night long, he made some really nice throws. He made some really nice plays, and he got his team the win. And that's what you also need to focus on. You can focus on the turnovers, the sloppy play, but you also need to focus on him making great throws, getting his team in the in the end zone or in field goal position when it needed to be done, and getting his team the win. And not only that, doing all that after a very shaky start to the game, not being
Yeah,
discouraged
but
by
that
a
game could have
shaky
went a
start
lot.
to the game, and getting his team on the right track, making the right throws, and getting the win. So from that sense, he had a very good game. From the sense of his decision making, he had a poor game. So he had a good game, and he also had a bad game at the same time.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it could have been a whole different story to the game if the
But at
defense
the
was
end of the
able.
day, it wasn't a whole different story.
You didn't even let me finish. At the end of the day, it could have been a whole different story if the defense doesn't hold the Packers to 2 field goals to begin the game when they were set
Yeah.
up in the Eagles' territory and could have easily struck. So, but yeah, I mean, I think Jalen Hurts made enough plays to win the game, but he also was the reason why the game was kept that close. I mean, he almost fumbled the snap at the end of the game if they don't come away with points there, and the Packers have an opportunity to drive down and win the game. So, um, yeah, but we're not going to harp too much on it. I think it was a little rusty. Like I said, I think his issues lie more so he has a little bit too much trust in himself, and he has to realize that he can't make errant passes over the middle of the field like that. But
Oh my God, it's now 9-4 Phillies. Sorry.
Are you concerned with Jalen Hurts' legs and presence as a runner nowadays?
I mean, a little bit. He didn't make anything happen with his legs Friday night. Everything too.
Wasn't even able to escape the pocket, really.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too is I hate to sound like a broken record, but I want to see how he looks on a normal football field. You
He
know,
can't keep going to the field though. Every like
but
that's
it's such a
we're
big
talking about the
factor
same
in the
situation.
game.
Everybody
It's
talked
such
about
a big factor in the game. It's not
yeah.
like it's not
And
nothing.
that's the factor of a lot of games. What was everybody saying about the Super Bowl a couple years back when they played the
Yeah, that was an issue there
and that
too.
was
But
for the
those
Super
are like
Bowl.
the two games. That's it. That's those two
Yeah,
games.
the first game of the season, which is already going to be shaky to begin with, and then the Super Bowl when you can do nothing about it and two teams are fighting for a championship. I mean, the Chiefs were
I'm
dealing with
not
that too.
complaining about it. I'm just saying in terms of
Well, you're like
evaluation, when you have something as huge of a factor as a slippery ass field, then you have to consider that when you're evaluating. I'm not sitting here like, oh, we had to play on that slippery field. We won the game. I don't care. But in terms of
I didn't watch Jalen Hurts
evaluation,
one
it's
time.
something to be taken into consideration.
I didn't watch Jalen Hurts one time flee the pocket and lose his footing. It didn't happen one time in the game.
Maybe he's fucking worried about fleeing the pocket because he's worried he's going to slip and when he's got a knee injury
They're
that
not
he's
thinking about that.
finally recovered from. I don't know. That's just a theory. I just want to see how he looks on a normal field. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
You're putting
And I
conspiracy
even
theories off
prefaced
the
it by
field out
saying
there.
I am a little worried about his legs.
You are concerned. Do you think he lost a step? Do you think that's what it is?
I
He's
think he
not as
might have.
fast?
I think, well, I think with all mobile quarterbacks, all dual threat quarterbacks, I think the first few years of their career, they start off really using their legs a lot. And as history has shown, they start using their legs less as their careers go on. Russell Wilson, his first few years in Seattle, they were running that read option all the time in Seattle. And then as his career went on, I mean, he only really ran when he was escaping the pocket. You look at Lamar Jackson, although he's still very mobile and still uses legs a ton, he's not rushing for like 1,100 yards a
Well,
season
that's because he
anymore.
wasn't playing.
Um,
That's because he wasn't playing full
even
season. He had
you
122
even
rushing
look
yards.
at Mike Vick. I mean, although in an Eagles uniform, he still ran a ton, but in the
Mike
Eagles
Vick's a little bit different
uniform,
because he lost a lot of his prime for the situation that he ended up in. So it's like
yeah,
it
but
was.
that's also part of it
We're
too. Is
talking about
as
we're talking about
quarterbacks get
busting in. We're
what's
talking
that?
about busting into his prime. Jalen Hurts, 26 years old, a year older than or a year younger than both of us,
Yeah,
busting into
but
his prime.
I think as time goes on with these dual threat quarterbacks, they learn how to perform from the pocket more. Because think about it, in college, they don't even have to be in the pocket that much. In high school, not at all. Just take off and run whenever. College, you're throwing a bit more, but you're still running a ton. So then the pros, when you start out, that's all you really know. But then you're making it a key to learn to throw from the pocket more. So you're staying in the pocket more. You're not running it as much. And on top of that, no matter what age you are, you're probably going to want to start taking less hits because the NFL hits hurt a lot more than college and high school. So
Well,
that's
he's still
another
not
reason you're
afraid. Like
running
he
it
showed
less.
the other day for that first down that he got. He's still not afraid to put his head down and use his shoulders and push the pile forward. So that's not
Actually, yeah,
going out
that
of his
was a
game
big
plan.
run he made. Maybe
But
I'm not that concerned. Um,
I mean, he ended up with 13 carries for 33 yards. So
Yeah, I mean, not great, but he did make some nice plays with his legs. Um, he was never. I mean, the only game where he was ever like the serious, big time threat to run quarterback was his first career start against New Orleans. That's when he was running it a ton in that game. But ever since then, I mean, it's never been like it's never been like to a crazy degree. I feel like. Um,
well, it's just mixed in very well. You know what I mean?
yeah, and
His lack of
speaking
resources
and
to begin his career was a reason why that he ran very often then. But since he's gotten AJ Brown, that really upticked the passing game just as a whole, and they were missing that when they only had Devontae Smith on the outside when they made the playoffs the first year, him as a starter, Nick Sirianni as a coach. But what are we looking forward to on Monday night? We have another primetime game. This one's in Philadelphia. Nick Foles' retirement game. There's going to be a different type of energy. The season opener is just going to be bumping at the link. Um, the Falcons ended up getting upset by the Steelers this weekend. They were sizable favorites, and a lot of people thought the Falcons were going to run away with the NFC South. And the offense did not look good at all for the Falcons this past weekend. Kirk Cousins looks like he's still dealing with that Achilles injury. He was never a mobile guy, and he was never a guy that was going to flee the pocket, but he could at least move around a little bit. I don't know if it's the Steelers having TJ Watt and him just being neutralized and then not being able. Caleb McGarry just had a day trying to block TJ Watt on Sunday, but what do you expect? What type of shot do you think the Falcons are going to be able to throw at the Eagles? Do you think they're going to just spiral down a hole where they have a bunch of talent and they're going to underperform again? Or do you think they're going to give the Eagles their best shot on Monday night?
Well, firstly, there was one more person I want to highlight from the game against the Packers, which I didn't get around to. Actually, two people, the coordinators. I did give Vic Fangio his flowers, but Kellen Moore, you know how many wide receiver screens I saw in that game? One. Um, It looked like a much more normal offense. So shout out Kellen Moore, shout out Vic Fangio. Um, I think this is going to be a good game against the Falcons. I do. If anybody watched the podcast last week during the fantasy draft, I thought this Falcons offense was going to look a lot better than this.
Oh my
Um,
god, I completely forgot that you took Kirk Cousins. Oh man, I forgot.
hey, listen, it was only one game. It was only one game.
Man.
Um, but yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too, is it's still a loaded offense. So I feel like it can break out at any point. So I'm not gonna go ahead and say, oh, it's gonna be a decisive win at the Link Monday night. I wouldn't be surprised if this is when the Falcons offense decide to show up after a shaky first week. But I could also see a great game from the Eagles. Like, as much as I think this Atlanta offense can be really good, I think this Eagles offense can be even better. I mean, what I think this Eagles offense can do at its peak, I I don't see a defense like the Falcons stopping it even remotely. I think it's going to be a win Monday
The
night.
Falcons defense has a lot of talent. You got to remember they signed Justin Simmons. They got arguably Jesse Bates, who's arguably the best safety in the league right now. AJ Terrell matching up with the receivers on the outside. So they brought in Matthew Judon as well. They got some players, Grady Jarrett. So they got some players on that side of the ball that can make some plays. But I'm not really too worried about the Falcons defense stopping the Eagles offense. I think the Eagles
That's
offense
what I mean. It's like, yeah, it's a
really
good
balanced in week
defense,
one.
but it's not an elite defense, and I feel like that's what you're going to need to stop this Eagles offense, because I think it's just a
I
very
don't think
loaded.
anybody's going to be able to fully stop the Eagles' offense just because they have so many different answers. But I think the Falcons, they have a lot of talent on their defense, and they might be able to make plays. I think the path for the Falcons to be in this game is if Jalen Hurts is making those types of decisions that he made in Week 1. If he has a lot more turnover-worthy plays, and that continues into Week 2, then the Eagles can find themselves in a bad hole because you don't want to. The Packers' offense is pretty good, but I think the Falcons. As a whole could be better than the Packers offense when they're playing well. And you don't want to be able to give the Falcons the ball inside the 20-yard line because you're turning the ball over in your own end. So I'm just really concerned about that's my only concern with the Eagles. And also the defensive line just has to play better. I mean, they can't allow 7.8 yards per carry. The Falcons arguably have the best running back duo in the entire league, and Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. And they're going to come ready to play. The Falcons pass passing offense was kind of limited with their protection this past weekend, but if the Eagles are not getting pressure, then it's going to make it that much easier for the Falcons to be able to move the ball down the field. So I think the Eagles defense, they're going to have to stop the run first, and they're going to have to make plays on the ball, but they're going to have to generate pressure because 2 sacks and them coming from your inside linebacker is not going to get it done versus the Falcons this weekend.
Yeah. Just a quick just to go off topic really, really quickly. I had a chance earlier to put money on Trey Turner to hit his second home run of the game. Would have been great odds. Almost did. Decided not to. Thought, what's the chances of that happening? Trey Turner did homer again. So just needed to get that out there. But
Tell them
yeah,
about
I
your
mean,
NFL bet. Tell them about your NFL bet real quickly.
yeah, if you saw on Twitter, I had a parlay. What was it? Tyreek Hill anytime touchdown, Trevor Lawrence passing yards, and somebody. I took somebody's receiving yards as well. Oh,
Yeah,
Jalen Waddle
who
receiving
was the money
yards,
line that you put on there?
and Jalen Waddle had his receiving yards. Tyreek Hill caught a touchdown pass. But Trevor Lawrence didn't get the passing yards I needed
What
him
team did you
to.
bet on
So,
though?
Hmm?
What team did you bet on?
I don't understand your question.
What team did you bet on this weekend? You sent me the slip, or should I just share the slip to the
You know
crowd?
what? With that being said, it is time for my meatball of the week. And my meatball of the week is the Giants GM. For all the reasons I mentioned earlier, that's how bad he is. That's how dumb he is. That's how much of a cocky idiot he is. He's my what's the deal? He's my meatball of the week. He's an not eggheaded. He's not bald. Why am I saying eggheaded? He's just a moron. You're my meatball of the week, Giants GM, whose name I forget off the top of my head. But anyway, back to the Eagles. They have like not only do they have all those weapons on offense, but they have a phenomenal offensive line. Going into the season, you're like, okay, you have a great left tackle in Mailata. You have a great left guard in Brandon Dickerson. You have a good center in Cam Jurgens. You have a Hall of Fame right tackle in Lane Johnson. But is the right guard position, how is that going to look? And Mekhi Becton said pretty damn well. So, yeah, you still have an elite offensive line, top 3 in football, a top 3 wide receiver group, a top 3 running back, a top 10 quarterback, in my personal opinion. I only an elite defense is going to be able to stop this offense, in my opinion. I think I think the Eagles win Monday night. I just don't know if it's going to be like a decisive statement victory. It could be a close game.
Score prediction.
Score prediction. I'm going to go 28-24.
28-24. I'm going to go with
28-24 Eagles.
I think the Eagles score a lot of points, and I think they're going to be putting up a lot of points for the entire season. So I'm going to go with the Eagles to put up 38 points and the Falcons to put up 24 points.
Wow, you're going 38.
Take the over in that game for sure. I don't know what the over is going to be. Probably somewhere between
let's check. Let's check the tape.
Might be up towards 51.5. I don't know, because the Falcons, had one offensive touchdown this past weekend, but
okay, it's gonna be easier if I pull this up on my phone. I was trying to do it on my laptop. I never use FanDuel on my laptop.
the over-under is 47.5.
For reference, what's 38 plus 24? 62. Yeah, so if you're a firm believer in that score, take the over. And then wait,
I might have to alternate the
what's
over.
28 plus 24? I also have it going over. So yeah, I think an alternate of like 50. I think that's a good bet. What would the odds be on that?
Probably like plus 200, close to it, plus 160 to 190 range.
Let's see, alternate total points. Over 50 plus. Well, it would be over 49.5. It would be plus 124. To get to plus 210, you would have to go 53.5, meaning there would have to be a 54 total points. But if you wanted to, say 60, since that final score you're looking at, that would be plus 440. So that would be a good bet, and you could parlay that with other stuff as well.
Does Saquon have multiple touchdowns again?
You know what? I think this offense is so dynamic that I think there's a good chance that like each week it's a different guy. You know what I mean? One week it's Saquon putting up 3 touchdowns. Another week it's Devontae Smith. Another week it's AJ Brown. Another week it's Jalen Hurts with his legs. So I don't know. I could see it being a plethora of guys getting it done on Monday night.
All right, before we move on to baseball, gave you guys some Eagles talk, but give me like 2 to 3 things from around the NFL that surprised you, or just things that you want to talk about real quickly that you saw from the games.
One thing I saw that I thought was very funny, somebody posted Justin Fields. I don't know what you call it, a pass chart where it shows where each throw was thrown at. Everything was past the numbers. There was nothing thrown in the middle of the field at all. Somebody said it looks like the strike zone of a pitcher that's about to get sent down to the minors. I said it looks like the umpire scorecard of an Angel Hernandez game. So yeah, I mean Justin Fields, I never thought he was good, but I thought that was funny. Will Levis, I kind of expected more from. I thought he had a bad game.
That is the worst pick six I have ever seen on any level of football. That
The
has to
funniest
be
was him on
the
his knees.
worst
Like
pick six.
that was the funniest part.
That
Like him.
that was even worse because didn't even pursue the ball carrier down the sidelines. He had at least had a chance to maybe make a play on him. I would have laid the boom after throwing a pick like that. That was just I would have benched him immediately. He would not have seen the field for the rest of the season if I see that. What do you say what do you say when you're addressing the team and you're watching film and that play comes up in front of the entire team?
I mean, in all fairness, when he threw it, he like fell to his knees as he threw it. So it's not like he threw it and then the
Bro,
guy
what
caught
do
it
you
and
mean
then
he
dropped
throw
to
it?
his knees like, oh,
Bro, what do you mean he throw it? He literally flicked it, underhand flicked it.
Oh yeah, that is right. Yeah, no, he did.
He flicked it thinking that he was going to hit a receiver 15 yards and that was on the sidelines outside the numbers. So it was like a 25, 30-yard throw from a flick that
Yeah,
was
it was
never
an
open.
awful,
Worst throw I've
awful
ever seen.
decision.
That has to be the worst throw. If Jalen Hurts would have made a pass like that, then we're talking there's
Well, who
riots
was
going on
it?
in Philadelphia.
Was it Dak last year? It might have been somebody else, but it might have been Dak. He was getting sacked, and then he just like threw the ball up as he's going to the ground, and it got picked off for a pick six. I mean, that was even worse. I can't remember which quarterback that was. It might have been Dak, but that was even worse. However, yeah, the Will Levis underhand toss, pick six, horrible, horrible. Um, the one thing I want to know, as much as I hate the 49ers, my heart goes out to that running back who played last night to come in and replace a CMC as an undrafted rookie, as an undrafted free agent from 2 years ago. Finally get your shot. You absolutely ball out. Your team wins. You're on top of the world. Then a reporter asked you when you got the word you'd be starting and you tell him Friday night and now you're in trouble. And and to just immediately lose all trust in the media like that, to go from being at the highest to highest to feeling very low and beat up about yourself. I mean, what? That was just awful. I mean, that's why the media really sucks sometimes. You always got to be tricking people with your questions. Like, come on. It's one thing to go after like a veteran player who makes a ton of money, try and get them to slip up in an interview, but like to let the kid have his moment. I was disgusted to see that.
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure Christian McCaffrey was already listed on the injury report, so it's not really
Well, no,
that.
it wasn't announced he wasn't playing until like 30 minutes before game
Yeah,
time.
that wasn't announced, but it was known that he had the calf injury. Everyone just thought that he was just assumed that he was going to play, and apparently he's not. There's a good chance that he doesn't play next week either. So we'll
Yeah. Well, now
continue
we
to
know
monitor
that.
that situation. If you're in fantasy football, go check out Jordan Mason if you're able to go scoop him. I think everybody should have him on the waiver wire unless somebody had Christian McCaffrey and picked him up before the game and started him, which kudos to you for doing that. So real quickly, before we get to baseball for the last part of the podcast, fantasy football, how'd you do?
Horrible. Not
Horrible.
good at all.
I ended up winning in the E5280 Sports League. I won 2 other leagues as well. I have 4 total leagues. I lost the one that I care the most about, though, so a little bit salty about that, but went 3 for 4, so can't be too upset.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, my
A.K.
team did
Dobbins,
terrible.
who was the number one player that kind of like outperformed their expectations on your fantasy team?
Well, Tyreek Hill had a phenomenal game, which I expected from him, but Joe Mixon really lit it up.
You have Joe
He
Mixon?
Yeah, he ended up with 30 carries in that game,
Yeah, the most
which no
rushing
one
yards of any
expected
player.
Joe Mixon to get 30 carries, especially when they have other weapons. So I hope they continue to do that for whatever reason. Because if the other guys can get it going, and
It just
I
seems
get
like sometimes when like a running back at that age like moves on to another team, Saquon's a little bit younger than Joe Mixon. It seems like those guys just like lost a step, and he actually looked like prime Joe Mixon. He looked really good. So
yeah.
that's something that could happen more so often. There's some underrated fantasy players, but on my bench, I had J.K. Dobbins, and J.K. Dobbins came back with a vengeance for the Chargers this past week, and I think he had 120 something yards rushing, and
Mm.
he looked really well. And if he can stay healthy, that's going to be a sleeper fantasy play. So, but three things that I took away from Sunday was that there's, a lot of quarterbacks struggled around the league. I think passing games were at an all-time high. I didn't expect there to be that many teams running the ball the way that they did and running the ball that well. And it kind of seemed like the league was venturing towards a passing game, a passing league, obviously. And that's what it's been. All the quarterbacks making all this money, but it just shows that running backs still have value. Um, all those illegal formation calls that was getting called this past weekend was crazy. Like in the Chiefs Ravens game, how many times did Ronnie Stanley get called for that illegal formation for not having his helmet on the belt line of the center? So I think Lane Johnson got called for that as well in the Eagles game. And then there's a couple more calls on Sunday about it, but it was really exaggerated in the Chiefs Ravens game. And at the end of the day, even if a guy keeps lining up like slightly off that, I don't know if you can keep calling that call as often as they called in that game. So I was a little bit surprised. And the last thing, the kickoffs. The kickoffs were interesting. We actually saw a kickoff, a dynamic kickoff, go to the crib. The Cardinals ran one back. And to end that off, I think the Cardinals are actually a pretty good team. I was surprised that the Cardinals were able to hang in the game with the Bills without Marvin Harrison really being a factor.
I don't. I still don't fully understand these new kickoffs. When is it a touchback to the 35 and when is it a touchback to the 20? I still don't. I still don't get
When you
it.
get it into when you kick it into the zone, I think when that zone between the goal line and like the 20-yard line, that's when I'm pretty sure that it ends at the 20. But if it goes into the end zone, that's the 30. Um,
35. Oh
it's
wait,
the
no,
30.
30. Yeah, 30.
Yeah.
Why am I saying
I already
35?
thought the 30 was pretty crazy. The 25, it used to be the 20. The 25
Yeah,
is
I
like
already,
very
yeah,
even
that's
and
what I
fair.
was
The
thinking.
30-yard
Like,
line is pretty generous to the offense to start at the 30-yard
it's
line.
very generous. You used to get it to 20, and then yeah, it
I'm
went to
still
the
surprised when I see
25, and
punt
we were
returners
like,
catching the ball, like consistently catching the ball at the 9, 8 yard line and putting themselves like in a 90-yard hole to go down the field and drive. And that happens so often with punters just placing the ball there and for the offense to start at the 30-yard line. But that also just gives more incentive to the kicker to really kick a good ball. So it makes the play just more competitive in general. But I was surprised that week one that we saw a kick return go to the house.
yeah. Well, I think with the new formation, I think it seems easier to return a kick to the house. So I think we might see a lot more of that this year. But yeah, I mean the 30 is way too generous. It was the 20 for years, and that was the 25, and we're like, you know what I mean. But now the 30. And that's why I was getting it confused with the 35 because I kept saying in my head, I'm like, pretty soon we're gonna see the 35 next, you know.
The
Um,
35 would be crazy. That's
and
65
the
yards
other
to
thing
them.
too is, you kick it out of bounds, right? Return team gets the ball in the 40. That used to really mean something. If you could get the ball to start, if you can start your drive on the 40 instead of the 20. Now it doesn't even feel like that great. Like, okay, yeah, we move up 10 yards. It's not like, whoa, anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so it's ridiculous. But all right, let's move on to baseball.
All right, we got a little bit of time to talk some baseball. Philadelphia Phillies, who have been pretty hot recently. This Rays series has given me like kind of like playoff vibes with how competitive the games have been and like how the games have gone down, especially last night, the way that it ended. It just felt like a playoff game. Had to have a walk-off hit to win the game. The Phillies are a little bit banged up right now with Alec Bohm and JT out of the lineup. So
They have even more injuries than that. Edmundo Sosa's out.
Edmundo Sosa's banged up. Austin Hayes, I think,
Austin
is this.
Hayes is out. Um, Spencer Turnbull obviously is still out, but yeah, I mean they're pretty banged up right now. But they've
It's felt like
won.
it's been 2 to 3 seasons since we've seen Spencer Turnbull pitch.
Yeah, apparently he's to come back for October. We'll see.
But how much can you how much trust can you put in a guy that's coming back from an injury that hasn't played practically the entire
Not a
season?
lot.
And can you trust
Yeah,
him in
not
the
a lot.
playoffs? I don't even
Not
know how
really.
much I trust
No,
Ranger right now.
I trust Ranger. He's Ranger.
Gave up a season high 10 hits today.
Yeah, he's Ranger. But
I mean, this is the first year Ranger has, anointed himself to the upper echelon of pitchers in the entire league. So he kind of
well,
floundered a little bit.
speaking of pitchers and speaking of injuries, we finally are getting updates on a guy that I very highly regard. Who we've talked about before in this podcast, not a lot, but we've talked about him, and that's Andrew Painter. Painter, I hardly know her. Andrew Painter, he finally is seeing some live pitching. I think at first he pitched a simulated game, and then he faced some live hitters. His fastball is back up to 99 miles per hour. I think before he was topping out at 100 or 101. So things are looking pretty good for Andrew Painter. I think we're gonna finally get to see him in action next season. And speaking of people in the minors, Aiden Miller, since going up to Double A, he's been hitting very well. So just to highlight our two of our top prospects, things are looking good for Andrew Painter, and Andrew Miller is just continuing to impress in the minor leagues.
What do you think about some of these prospects? Like, when will we actually see them in the majors? Like some of these guys, these position players, I feel like the Phillies have a lot of their position players like holding down spots. Like the entire infield really doesn't need to be replaced by anybody, and that's like a spot that Aiden Miller would obviously take up. Maybe JP Crawford in the outfield at center field would be the most likely prospect to come up out of the position players next to fill the center field role if Johan Rojas isn't that guy. So, what do you think about that? Do you think, like Andrew Painter's obviously going to have a spot in the rotation at the back end, and they'll gladly try out the Andrew Painter experience over a guy like Taijuan Walker, especially once that contract gets deeper next season? It will be the third year of that contract, and they won't have as much obligation to that contract as they once had when it was earlier in the contract. But how what prospect could you see coming up into the majors besides Andrew Painter that's like a position player that could actually make an impact for the Phillies?
Well, that's the thing is you could look at it as Aiden Miller is an infielder. There's no room for him on the infield. But I look at it like this. Kyle Schwarber has what 2 years left on his deal. He's getting up there. If they bring him back, that's phenomenal. But if they don't bring him back after his contract, I mean that DH spot is open. So that really opens up
I think
endless
Kyle Schwarber is guaranteed.
possibilities.
I think there's more of a chance that Kyle Schwarber's on the team than Nick Castellanos
Well,
is.
and that's the other thing too is maybe Castellanos walks. They put Schwarber back in the outfield, and either Bohm or Miller
I don't know.
DH.
You're only getting older with Kyle Schwarber. And we saw what he started like 2 games at outfield this year, and one of them resulted in the injury where him and Bryce got hurt in the same game.
Yeah, look, I'm just speculating. I'm just giving you the avenue that I see for Aiden
Yeah, I
Miller to
think the path for
possibly.
one of those position players to come up to the majors would be probably in the outfield because there's not really the infield. Maybe, catcher seems like it might become an issue. I don't think it's anything with a talent for JT. I think it's just more so his body's a little bit deteriorating a little, he's had the nagging injury with the knee that he's been dealing with the entire season. Apparently the swelling's down right now, so that's a good thing. But I don't know how much longer JT can be playing a high volume amount of games for you. So maybe a catcher like Rafael Marchand obviously got his opportunity this year, but maybe, another catcher would have been nice to have Ohapi on the roster now, but it is what it is. So
Yeah, Ohape, he's having a great season.
he's a
It
good
kind of
player, man.
sucks that yeah, it kind of sucks that we had to trade him because, yeah, we need to look at the future at catcher because JT does not have much time left. So I don't know. Maybe they can make a trade for a catcher prospect at some point. Maybe you get rid of Taiwan Walker and somebody gives you a catcher prospect. I doubt it. They're probably not even going to be able to trade Taiwan Walker at this point. But
Gosh,
prospect,
man.
what's
Who's
that?
taking on that contract? I don't even know.
No
He would
one,
clear
no one.
waive. He's clearing
It's
waivers
not.
right
It's
now.
not
But
only the contract. It's. I don't even think it's that much of who's taking on the contract. I think it's who's taking on the pitcher. I think his level of play is far worse than his contract. I mean, he's awful. He's terrible. They can't even trust him to throw a couple innings out of the bullpen. They can't trust him to do anything. What good is it gonna give you having him on your team? He's really, 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 really bad at pitching. He's not good at all. So that's the main reason I could not foresee anyone making a trade for him. Not because of the contract, but because of how utterly awful he is.
yeah, it's just a shame they could have used that money elsewhere. They could have got, a slew of different things. Maybe this all season they could have made more moves if that contract wasn't on their books. So um, there's always talking about like in the offseason, if they can go pursue a Juan Soto and what it would take, they would have to move one of the contracts. That's the contract that you need to move. You need to figure out a way this offseason to get out of that contract and not necessarily spend that money right away, but just clear yourself of that burden and just move on because that's just a horrible situation. So, but I like the way that the Phillies are playing right now. So I don't want to harp on the bad stuff because there's a lot of good stuff to talk about. I mean, they got
Oh
blown
yeah,
out
they
on
look great.
Sunday. Sunday they got absolutely throttled. And it was a little bit disappointing because they brought up Seth Johnson from the minors who they got in the trade from Baltimore. So I was excited to see him go out there. But, that happens sometimes in your debut. So it is what it is. But um, I like the way the position players are playing. Kyle Schwarber hit an MLB record 14th leadoff home run to start the game today. So that's very impressive. And I think they're clicking at the right point. They just have to get healthy. Alec Boehm is a very important part of this team, especially with him batting cleanup. That's a huge missing void that's in your lineup. So they're going to have to figure that out. But once they're at full strength and they're healthy, I'm more so not worried about who's going to be off the playoff roster because who's going to be the impactful players that are starting. But I'm interested to see the way that they construct the playoff roster with the guys coming off the bench like the Weston Wilsons, the Cody Clemens, and guys like that because they're going to have to make some tough decisions because they have a lot of guys that have contributed at different types of times. So um, at this point, Cody Clemens is probably the hottest guy that's not in the everyday starting lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for a while during the season, Edmundo Sosa was the guy. There were even talks like, "Oh, what are you going to do once Trey Turner gets back?" Because Edmundo Sosa is playing so well. And currently it's Cody Clemens. And we've seen this from Clemens last year. We saw him go through a bit of a hot streak at one point when he was filling in for Bryce Harper. I like Cody Clemens. I do. I think he has potential to be more than just a platoon guy. He's been hitting the ball very well lately, and he's been coming up big when they need him to. I think even though you're not really going to see these guys in the postseason, I think it's so big to have these guys off your bench who can perform because I think it just like adds to the locker room. I feel like it adds to the camaraderie, to the what?
I'm just shaking my head because once you said that, I just immediately thought about Garrett Stubbs and how much I don't want him to be on the playoff
Well, no,
roster.
but I'm talking about guys who actually perform. You know what I mean? It's like when
Well, you
everyone's
said guys that are
playing
coming off
well.
the bench that you're not really going to see in the playoffs. There's going to be certain situations where there's crucial moments that you're going to need a pinch batter to
Yeah,
come in.
no, you're gonna have them pinch hit at times, but I mean, you're not gonna see much of them. You know, you're
Yeah.
gonna see very little of them. Um, and yeah, them being good hitters and needing them to pinch hit at certain times, can come up clutch. But I just think when everyone's playing well, I think that just adds to how much everyone's getting along with each other, and that just adds to the vibes of it all. And I don't, and that's not me talking about Garrett Stubbs, like he brings the vibes. Like I mean, like I think that really brings a team together when everyone is playing well.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying for sure. So how are you feeling going into the playoffs now? We got what, 16, 17 games left after this one tonight?
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait for the postseason. Red October is my new favorite time of the year ever since 2022. Christmas, get out of here. Summer, who cares? Um, Easter, I don't even know.
Easter.
I don't know. I can't. I'm running out of times of the year off the top of my head,
I'm really
but
hating the spring, dude, thinking about it. Like, I was so anxious to get football back. Like, this is my favorite time of year right now. The crossover, all the sports, when you get basketball starting back up and you have playoff baseball, then you have the NFL season like midway through. So that's the best time of year for me. Then you obviously get the UFC fights on the weekends and everything. So that's my favorite time of year. But I'm excited for the Phillies this postseason. I think they're playing well, and they've really righted the ship from that bad stretch. I mean, it was pretty crazy. We were talking about 6 weeks where they played really, really bad baseball, and it was really concerning. And they're just like seemed like there was no answers to what they had going on. But now it seems like they're prepping for the playoffs. Did you see that the bench is clear tonight?
the bench is clear tonight.
Yeah, Nick Castellanos got hit by a pitch, and then the bench is cleared, and then Bryce
Oh,
got a
I didn't even
really
see
close.
that.
Bryce almost escalated it into a full-on brawl.
I did not see that at all.
What do you
I'll
think
have to
about
go back
Bryce
to
last night? Not running that ball out and getting to second base and stopping and staring at the ball.
It's listen. It's not
Would
something
you
you
have
want to
benched him?
see. What's that?
Would you have benched him?
No, no. Listen, it's not
Why
something
you
you
let
would.
that slide? Like that's not a big deal. Like that wasn't like
You're
in
not
that
letting me
ninth inning.
speak. You're not letting me speak about it. What do you mean, let it slide? You haven't heard my full thought on it. Um, it's not something you want to see. Not at all. It is inexcusable. But as it was mentioned, Bryce Harper at the end, after the game, took full responsibility for it, took full accountability for it. He apologized for it. It's probably not going to happen again. I would trust him with that. And he's Bryce Harper. You know what I mean? All he's
That's
done
why
for
it's
this
an. That's
city,
why.
all he has done for this city, and we're gonna like
Bro, how
excommunicate
many
him
times?
for
How
not
many times?
hustling out of the box.
How many times
He
has he done
sent us
that?
to the World Series. God damn it! He's Bryce Harper. He took
How many times has he
accountability
done
for
that
it,
this year, though?
huh?
How many times has he done that this year?
I don't know. This
It's
was
been a
the first
lot.
time it was.
It's been a lot. You count on you start counting on the two hands with how many times that he's done that.
I don't know, but look, if it has happened a lot, then it happened in situations where it didn't actually come into play. And
Well, last
for it
night definitely mattered. It was ninth
yeah,
inning.
it definitely mattered. And I think now he's realizing, because he took accountability for it. So I think now he's realizing, okay, I got to stop doing that. He's Bryce Harper. I fully trust him. All right. He's Bryce goddamn Harper. He has done everything for this team. I'm not going to say let's excuse it because he's Bryce Harper. I'm going to say it's not something to ignore, but to bench him, to bench Bryce Harper, get out of here. Just get out of here.
I don't think anybody's above, being disciplined at certain times to make a statement to the team. So that's how I feel about the situation. Would have liked to see them run that ball out and not put themselves in a situation to have Buddy Kennedy bail them out of. So, but hey, it ended up working out in the end. So Speaking of the end, this will be the end of episode 63 of the Paisan Sports podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in once again, presented by Elevation 5280 Sports. Me and Dante will be back next week, most likely on Tuesday again, so we can talk about the Eagles game that's happening on Monday. We'll obviously have an update on the Phillies and what they have done for the rest of the week since this podcast. And if any Sixers news comes out, it's been a little bit dry with the Sixers news. We did miss that one signing of the dude's name that I can't pronounce a couple weeks ago.
I don't even know who you're talking about.
Gershon Yursabali.
I have no idea.
He was the one that dunked on LeBron.
What? No, we did cover that, and that was like a month ago. But we covered
we did not talk about that one lick.
Could have sworn we did, but
no, we did not. But that's pretty much the only update that we have right now. So, I mean, yeah. We'll be back next week with some more topics for you guys. So thanks for tuning in once again, and we'll see you then.